If you eat at these 8 popular UK restaurants, you might be putting your health and wallet at serious risk. We investigated all major restaurant chains operating across Britain, from their food sourcing practices to their kitchen hygiene standards and employee treatment, to find the 8 worst offenders you're better off completely avoiding. The results reveal a pattern of corner cutting, contamination, and outright deception that should make you think twice before your next meal out. Pizza Hut UK, the mouldy dough scandal. Pizza Hut has been a British high street staple for decades, promising families hot, fresh pizzas in a casual dining atmosphere. The red roof logo means comfort food and birthday parties for millions of kids who grew up in the UK. Walk into any Pizza Hut and you'll see an all-you-can-eat salad bar. Personal pan pizzas and that familiar smell of baking dough. That's the promise. Here's what actually happens behind those kitchen doors. In March 2019, the Pizza Hut in Thornaby-on-Tees was forced to close immediately after environmental health officers discovered widespread mould contamination throughout the kitchen. Inspectors found mould growing on pizza dough that was being prepared for customers, mould on food preparation surfaces, and mould inside refrigeration units where ingredients were stored. The restaurant received a 0-star food hygiene rating, the worst possible score. Customers who had eaten there in the days before the inspection reported severe stomach illnesses, vomiting, and diarrhea. The local council called the conditions unacceptable and prohibited the restaurant from serving food until a complete deep clean and re-inspection could be completed. But here's where it gets disturbing. This wasn't an isolated incident. Just months later, in August 2019, the Pizza Hut in Colchester faced similar charges. Health inspectors discovered mouse droppings throughout the kitchen, including on food preparation surfaces and near pizza ovens. Staff were found handling food without proper hygiene protocols, and crucial temperature controls were being ignored, meaning ingredients sat in the danger zone where bacteria multiply rapidly. The restaurant was prosecuted and fined 18,000 tullons plus 2,847 in costs. A former employee who worked at a different Pizza Hut location in Manchester told investigators, "We were constantly pressured to use ingredients past their dates. Managers would just tell us to scrape off any visible mould and use the rest. Nobody wanted to waste stock because it came out of bonus calculations." Think about that scale. Pizza Hut operates over 250 locations across the UK, serving millions of customers annually. If these practices were happening at multiple inspected locations, how many uninspected kitchens were operating under similar conditions? The company's response was textbook corporate deflection. They apologised, promised retraining, and claimed these were isolated incidents. But the pattern tells a different story. In 2021, whistleblowers revealed that Pizza Hut UK had been struggling financially for years, closing dozens of locations and cutting costs wherever possible. Staff levels were reduced, meaning fewer people to maintain proper cleaning schedules. Ingredient quality dropped as the company switched to cheaper suppliers. Former area managers confirmed that hygiene standards were sacrificed to keep failing locations barely profitable. One stated, "The pressure from corporate was insane. Hit your food cost targets or lose your job. Nobody cared if you were cutting corners on safety as long as the numbers looked good on paper." When your pizza chain serves mould-covered dough to families, has mouse droppings near the ovens, and employees are told to scrape mould off ingredients rather than discard them, you're not getting fresh Italian-style pizza. You're getting whatever survives a desperate company's cost-cutting death spiral. TGI Fridays, when financial collapse meets food safety failure. TGI Fridays branded itself as the fun, casual American dining experience in the UK. Colourful cocktails, loaded potato skins, sizzling fajitas, and walls covered in vintage Americana memorabilia. For years, it was the go-to spot for office celebrations and family gatherings. The promise was quality American comfort food in a lively atmosphere. That promise has rotted from the inside out. In September 2024, TGI Fridays UK collapsed into administration, leaving 4,500 employees in limbo and customers holding worthless gift cards. But the financial failure was just the visible symptom of years of operational decay. Multiple locations had been racking up food safety violations that the struggling company simply couldn't afford to address. The Manchester Printworks location received a 1-star hygiene rating in early 2024 after inspectors found serious issues with food handling, temperature control, and cross-contamination risks. Staff reported that freezers were frequently breaking down, meaning ingredients would partially thaw and then be refrozen multiple times, a practice that creates ideal conditions for bacterial growth. Here's what actually happens in a TGI Fridays kitchen when the company is hemorrhaging money. Former kitchen staff from the Birmingham location revealed that when equipment broke, it stayed broken for weeks or months because there was no budget for repairs. One grill had a broken temperature gauge for over 6 months, meaning cooks were guessing whether chicken and burgers reached safe internal temperatures. Another employee stated, "We had one working freezer for a kitchen that should have had 3. Everything was crammed in there, raw chicken touching ready-to-eat items, ice cream next to raw beef. It was a contamination nightmare waiting to happen." But nothing compares to what happened at the Coventry TGI Fridays in June 2023. A family celebration turned into a hospital emergency when 7 people, including 3 children, were rushed to A&E with severe food poisoning after eating at the restaurant. All 7 had ordered chicken dishes. Lab tests confirmed Campylobacter contamination, one of the most common causes of food poisoning in the UK. The family's solicitor stated, "These children were violently ill for over a week. One required IV fluids due to dehydration. This was completely preventable if proper food safety protocols had been followed." The investigation revealed that the chicken had been stored at incorrect temperatures and undercooked. Staff hadn't been properly trained on safe minimum cooking temperatures, and the kitchen lacked functioning thermometers. TGI Fridays settled the claim out of court for an undisclosed sum, but no criminal charges were filed. Think about that. A restaurant nearly killed children through negligence, and the only consequence was a quiet financial settlement. Multiple locations also faced criticism for misleading menu descriptions. The Tennessee whiskey glaze contained no actual whiskey. The authentic Cajun spices were generic spice blends from bulk suppliers. The handcrafted burgers arrived frozen from central suppliers and were identical to those served at budget chains. You're paying premium casual dining prices for reheated, mislabeled food prepared in kitchens where equipment failures and staff shortages have made food safety optional. When your restaurant chain is so financially desperate that broken equipment stays broken for months, raw chicken contaminates ready-to-eat food, and 7 people, including children, end up hospitalized from a single meal, you're not getting American comfort food. You're getting the liquidation sale buffet where everything must go, including food safety standards. Frankie and Benny's, the reheating factory. Masquerading as Italian-American, Frankie and Benny's positioned itself as the family-friendly Italian-American restaurant where everything is made with love and authenticity. The checkered tablecloths, the vintage New York photographs on the walls, and menu descriptions promising handcrafted dishes and freshly prepared meals created an illusion of quality. Parents trusted it for children's birthday parties. Couples thought they were getting decent Italian-inspired food at reasonable prices. That trust was built on systematic deception. Here's what actually happens in a Frankie and Benny's kitchen. Former staff members who worked at locations across the UK have consistently revealed the same reality. Nearly everything arrives frozen or pre-prepared in vacuum-sealed bags. The meatballs aren't rolled in-house, they arrive frozen in bulk. The pasta sauces come in industrial-sized plastic pouches that get heated in water baths. The grilled chicken is pre-cooked at a central facility, then reheated on a grill just long enough to create cosmetic char marks. Even the tiramisu, that classic Italian dessert, arrives pre-portioned and frozen, then thawed in refrigerators before being served as if it were made on site. A former assistant manager from the Leicester location stated in a 2022 interview, "I felt like a fraud every time I took someone's order. Customers would ask if the lasagna was homemade, and we were trained to say it was prepared fresh in our kitchen. Technically true, we did reheat it fresh, but it was absolutely not made from scratch. Everything came out of a freezer or a vacuum pack. The only thing we actually cooked from raw ingredients was the chips." Another employee from the Milton Keynes restaurant confirmed, "We called the back area the microwave station because that's where most of the magic happened. Pasta dishes, 3 minutes in the microwave, then into a pan for 30 seconds to make it look like it was cooked fresh. The customers had no idea. But here's where it gets disturbing. In November 2021, the Frankie and Benny's in Basildon was prosecuted after environmental health officers discovered extensive food safety failures during a routine inspection. The restaurant received a 1-star hygiene rating after inspectors found raw meat stored above ready-to-eat food in refrigerators, meaning blood and bacteria could drip onto food that would go directly to customers. Temperature logs were fabricated, with staff simply writing down acceptable temperatures without actually checking equipment. Cleaning schedules existed on paper but weren't being followed, with grease buildup on cooking equipment posing fire risks and hygiene hazards. The most alarming discovery was in the walk-in freezer. Inspectors found food items with dates going back over 18 months, well beyond safe storage times even for frozen food. Some packages had no dates at all. Staff admitted they had no system for rotating stock, meaning old food sat buried at the back while new deliveries were placed in front. When questioned, the manager couldn't explain the dating system or prove that ancient frozen items weren't being used in current service. The restaurant was fined $1,200 plus $3,200 in costs. Think about that scale. Frankie and Benny's operates over 80 locations across the UK. If one location had food dating back 18 months in the freezer and was fabricating temperature logs, how many other sites were operating under similar conditions? The parent company, the Restaurant Group, has been closing locations steadily since 2018 as the brand struggles with declining sales and rising costs. Cost pressures mean less staff training, cheaper ingredients, and deferred maintenance on crucial kitchen equipment. Customer complaints on review sites paint a consistent picture across multiple locations. Lukewarm food, obviously reheated dishes, and meals that taste identical whether ordered in London, Manchester, or Edinburgh. That consistency isn't the mark of quality, it's the signature of centralized mass production. You're not eating at an Italian-American restaurant, you're eating at a reheating factory with checkered tablecloths and a theatrical menu that describes frozen food in romantic terms. When your restaurant serves 18-month-old frozen food, trains staff to mislead customers about preparation methods, and stores raw meat above ready-to-eat items, you're not getting handcrafted Italian-American cuisine, you're getting whatever survives in the back of a freezer, reheated and served with a side of food safety violations. Bella Italia. Authentic Italian name. Inauthentic everything else. Bella Italia trades heavily on its Italian name and imagery. The menu features Italian flags, the decor suggests a trattoria, and dish names are in Italian with descriptions that promise authentic flavours. For tourists visiting London and families looking for affordable Italian food, Bella Italia seemed like a safe bet. The reality behind those Italian flags tells a very different story. In August 2023, the Bella Italia in Brighton was forced to close temporarily after a damning inspection revealed what the Food Standards Agency called a serious risk to public health. Environmental health officers found mouse droppings throughout the kitchen, including in food storage areas and on shelving where clean plates were kept. A heavy cockroach infestation was discovered behind cooking equipment, with insects seen scurrying across food preparation surfaces during the inspection. Raw chicken was found stored at room temperature in the prep area, well into the danger zone where bacteria multiply exponentially. The restaurant's pest control records showed the company had been aware of rodent activity for over 3 months, but had failed to take adequate action. Staff working conditions revealed why these problems festered. Multiple employees reported working 12-hour shifts with minimal breaks, often alone in the kitchen during quiet periods, making proper cleaning impossible. One former chef from the Nottingham location stated, "They schedule one person to handle everything, taking orders from the floor, cooking, plating, and cleaning. You can't maintain hygiene standards when you're that understaffed. I'd see food dropped on the floor, rinsed under water, and sent out because there wasn't time to remake it. Management's attitude was just don't get caught. But here's where it gets disturbing. Bella Italia, like Frankie and Benny's, is owned by the Restaurant Group and follows the same model of centralised production and reheating. But Bella Italia adds another layer of deception through its aggressive marketing of Italian authenticity. The handmade pasta arrives frozen from suppliers. The slow-cooked ragu is produced in industrial quantities at a central kitchen, then shipped frozen to locations. The tiramisu, bruschetta, and even the freshly baked garlic bread all follow the same pattern: factory production, freezing, distribution, and reheating. In 2020, an investigation by consumer watchdog Which sent researchers to multiple Bella Italia locations with the same finding. The food was indistinguishable from supermarket ready meals, but cost 3 to 4 times as much. Chemical analysis of source samples showed they contained the same preservatives, stabilizers, and flavor enhancers found in budget frozen meals. There was nothing authentically Italian about the food except the names on the menu. The financial pressure on Bella Italia has been immense. In 2020, the company closed 22 locations permanently, and dozens more have followed. Remaining restaurants are operating on skeleton crews with aging equipment and deferred maintenance. The Coventry location was prosecuted in 2022 for serving food after its use-by date, with staff admitting they regularly extended dates on ingredients to reduce waste. The fine was $8,900 plus costs, but no criminal charges were brought against managers who had instructed staff to ignore dating systems. Former employees describe a culture where cost-cutting trumped everything else. "We were told to stretch every ingredient as far as possible," revealed a server from the Manchester location. "If sauce looked low, add water. If the pasta seemed old, just add more sauce to hide it." The profit margin on those dishes was already huge because everything was so cheap to produce, but corporate always wanted more. They didn't care if quality suffered or if corners got cut on safety. When your Italian restaurant has cockroach infestations behind the stoves, serves pasta that arrives frozen from factories, instructs staff to extend use-by dates, and charges premium prices for food indistinguishable from supermarket ready meals, you're not getting Bella Italia, you're getting Bella Ingano, beautiful deception, where the only authentic thing is the authentically poor food safety record. Café Rouge, French cuisine from the freezer aisle. Café Rouge presents itself as a slice of Parisian café culture on British high streets. The menus are designed to look like French newspapers. The décor features vintage advertising posters from Belle Époque France, and the promise is simple: authentic French bistro food at accessible prices. Croissants, croque-monsieur, moule frite, and steak frite all suggest a kitchen where French culinary traditions are honoured. That romantic image collapses the moment you see what actually happens behind the scenes. Here's what actually happens in a Café Rouge kitchen. The croissants that arrive at your table aren't baked on site from laminated dough. They arrive frozen in bulk from industrial suppliers, often the same suppliers that provide croissants to budget hotel chains and motorway service stations. The French onion soup comes in a concentrate that gets mixed with water and reheated. The cassoulet, that slow-cooked peasant dish that traditionally takes hours, arrives in vacuum-sealed bags ready to be reheated in boiling water. Even the crème brûlée, which requires careful preparation and torching, arrives pre-made in ramekins, ready to be briefly torched for presentation purposes only. A former sous chef who worked at the Reading location for 3 years revealed the reality in a 2021 interview. "I trained in actual French cuisine before I took that job. I thought I'd be cooking. Instead, I spent my days opening bags, reheating pre-made sauces, and arranging food on plates to look homemade. The steak was the only thing we actually cooked from raw, and even that came pre-portioned and pre-seasoned from a supplier. When customers would compliment the food and ask for recipes, I felt embarrassed. There were no recipes. Everything came with reheating instructions. But here's where it gets disturbing. In February 2022, the Café Rouge in Canterbury was prosecuted following a food safety inspection that revealed systematic failures. Environmental health officers found raw chicken stored alongside cooked meats in the same refrigerator, creating severe cross-contamination risks. The refrigeration units themselves were operating at incorrect temperatures, with some running as warm as 12 degrees Celsius, well above the safe maximum of 5 degrees Celsius for chilled food storage. Inspectors discovered that the restaurant had been operating with broken temperature monitoring equipment for over 2 months, meaning staff had no way of knowing if food was being stored safely. The investigation also uncovered that cleaning schedules existed only on paper. Deep cleaning equipment that should have been cleaned daily hadn't been properly cleaned in weeks. Grease traps were overflowing, creating both hygiene hazards and fire risks. Staff interviewed during the investigation admitted they hadn't received proper food safety training, with one employee stating they had never been shown how to use a food thermometer despite regularly cooking meat dishes. Café Rouge was fined $15,300 plus $4,200 in costs, but the restaurant was allowed to reopen after just 5 days of remedial work. Think about that scale. Café Rouge operates over 50 locations across the UK, all following the same centralised model of frozen and pre-prepared food. The company has changed ownership multiple times since 2014, passing through various private equity firms and restaurant groups, each time emerging with more locations closed and costs cut further. In 2020, Café Rouge entered administration, closing 61 restaurants and making hundreds of employees redundant. The surviving locations operate on reduced staffing with increased pressure to maximise profit from every plate. Multiple former employees from different locations have reported identical practices, extending use-by dates on dairy products, serving salad ingredients that were visibly wilting, and reusing garnishes from returned plates. One manager from the Bristol location stated, "Corporate sent these ridiculous labour budgets that made proper food safety impossible. You'd have one person trying to run an entire service, taking orders, cooking, plating and cleaning. Corners got cut because there was physically no other way to keep up, and when health inspectors came, we'd get frantic calls to make everything look perfect for a few hours. Then it was back to business as usual." Customer complaints across review platforms show a consistent pattern: cold food, obviously reheated dishes, and meals that taste identical whether you're in London, Birmingham or Edinburgh. That consistency isn't quality control, it's the signature of mass-produced frozen food heated to order. The prices remain premium, with main courses ranging from 12 to 18s, despite the food costing a fraction of that to produce. When your French bistro serves frozen croissants from the same supplier as motorway service stations, stores raw chicken with cooked meats, operates with broken temperature monitoring for months, and trains staff who don't know how to use a thermometer, you're not getting authentic French cuisine. You're getting an expensive theatre production where frozen food plays the role of bistro cooking. Harvester, the salad bar contamination crisis. Harvester built its reputation on a simple promise: quality grilled food with an unlimited salad bar that made families feel like they were getting exceptional value. Children loved the freedom of building their own salads, parents appreciated the healthy options, and the rotisserie chicken centerpiece suggested everything was freshly prepared. For decades, Harvester was a British institution, a reliable choice for Sunday roasts and casual family dining. That reputation has been systematically destroyed by what happens at those salad bars. Here's what actually happens at a Harvester salad bar. In March 2023, Public Health England investigated an outbreak of E. coli infections linked to Harvester restaurants across the Midlands. 17 people became seriously ill, with 5 requiring hospitalisation. The investigation traced the source to contaminated salad items at the self-service bars. What they discovered was a systematic failure of food safety protocols across multiple locations. Salad bars were not being properly temperature controlled, with items sitting at room temperature for hours. Sneeze guards were positioned too high to actually protect food from customer contamination. Serving utensils were being reused without proper washing between service periods. But the most damning evidence came from staff testimonies. Employees revealed that salad bar items were routinely kept beyond safe serving times to reduce waste. Wilted lettuce would be refreshed by soaking it in ice water and placed back in service. Salad dressings that should have been discarded after 4 hours were kept out for entire shifts. One former team member from the Wolverhampton location stated, "We were told to make the salad bar last as long as possible. If something looked bad, you'd just move fresh stuff on top and push the old stuff to the bottom. Management didn't want to see waste because it affected their bonuses." Nobody cared that customers were basically playing Russian roulette with food poisoning. The investigation expanded and found violations at over 30 Harvester locations. Temperature logs had been falsified at multiple sites, with staff simply recording acceptable temperatures without actually checking. Cross-contamination was rampant, with the same serving spoons used for different items throughout service. Cleaning schedules for salad bar equipment were inconsistent, with some locations only doing deep cleans weekly, despite health guidelines requiring daily sanitization of self-service areas. But nothing compares to what happened at the Harvester in Basildon in July 2022. A children's birthday party became a medical emergency when 12 of the 15 children in attendance developed severe gastroenteritis within hours of eating. All 12 had consumed food from the salad bar. Laboratory testing confirmed norovirus contamination, likely spread through the self-service format where multiple customers touched the same serving utensils. Several children were hospitalized with dehydration. One parent stated, "My daughter was violently ill for 4 days. She lost over 2 kilograms in body weight and needed IV fluids." This was supposed to be a celebration, and instead it became a nightmare. The restaurant's response was to offer us a refund and a voucher. They didn't seem to understand they'd nearly killed children. The prosecution that followed revealed the Basildon location had received warnings about salad bar hygiene during 2 previous inspections, but had failed to implement corrective measures. Staff were not trained on proper food handling for self-service areas. The restaurant was fined $28,500 plus $6,800 in costs, one of the largest penalties ever imposed on a Harvester location. Yet 3 months later, the restaurant was back in operation with minimal changes to procedures. Think about that scale. Harvester operates over 220 locations across the UK, nearly all featuring the same self-service salad bar concept. The model itself creates inherent contamination risks that are nearly impossible to control in a budget restaurant environment. Customers of all ages, many of them children, handle serving utensils and reach over food. Sneezes, coughs, and unwashed hands contaminate shared surfaces. Staff levels are kept minimal to maximize profits, meaning proper monitoring becomes impossible during busy service periods. Former managers have revealed that corporate pressure to reduce food costs meant salad bar items were stretched to dangerous limits. We'd get these tiny labour budgets that didn't account for the actual work required to maintain a safe salad bar, explained a former general manager from the Leeds location. You'd need someone monitoring it constantly, refreshing items, checking temperatures, replacing utensils, cleaning surfaces. But you'd have maybe one person trying to do that while also seating customers, taking drink orders and clearing tables. It was impossible to do it safely, so things got missed. And when things get missed with food safety, people get sick. When your family restaurant has 17 people hospitalized from E. coli traced to your salad bars, admits to refreshing wilted lettuce by soaking it and putting it back in service, falsifies temperature logs, and runs skeleton crews that make proper hygiene monitoring impossible, you're not getting quality grilled food with healthy options. You're getting a contamination buffet where the only thing unlimited is the bacterial growth. Aberdeen Steakhouses, tourist trap turned health hazard. Aberdeen Steakhouses. Central London, particularly around Leicester Square and Piccadilly Circus, targeting tourists with promises of quality British steaks at reasonable prices. The red and black branding suggests traditional British dining. The prominent locations attract foot traffic, and the menus promise Aberdeen Angus beef cooked to order. What actually happens inside these establishments represents one of the most cynical operations in UK dining, a deliberate trap set for visitors who don't know better. Here's what actually happens at an Aberdeen steakhouse. Despite the name and marketing, the restaurants have no actual connection to Aberdeen or Aberdeen Angus cattle. The steaks are budget cuts from bulk suppliers, often from animals raised overseas, processed in Eastern Europe, and shipped frozen to the UK. Former kitchen staff have confirmed the meat arrives pre-portioned in vacuum packs, often already past its prime, with a greyish colour that gets disguised through aggressive searing that creates a charred exterior while leaving the interior undercooked. But here's where it gets disturbing. In 2019, environmental health officers conducted coordinated inspections of multiple Aberdeen steakhouse locations after a spike in food poisoning complaints. What they found was systematic negligence across the chain. The Leicester Square location received a 1-star hygiene rating after inspectors discovered raw meat stored at room temperature in the kitchen, refrigeration units operating at dangerously high temperatures, and a complete absence of proper food safety management systems. Staff could not demonstrate they understood safe cooking temperatures for different meats. Thermometers were either missing or not calibrated. The Coventry Street location was even worse. Inspectors found mouse droppings in dry storage areas, cockroaches in the basement where food was kept, and evidence of a sustained pest infestation that management had ignored for months. Cleaning standards were described as wholly inadequate, with grease build-up throughout the kitchen posing both hygiene and fire hazards. The restaurant was immediately prohibited from operating until extensive remedial work could be completed. It reopened 6 weeks later after paying $19,200 in fines and costs. What makes Aberdeen steakhouses particularly insidious is the deliberate targeting of tourists. The restaurants cluster in high-traffic tourist areas where visitors are unlikely to return or follow up on negative experiences. Menus are designed to look substantial with photographs that bear no resemblance to what arrives at the table. Prices seem reasonable compared to other central London options, but the portions are small and the quality is bottom tier. Review sites are flooded with complaints, steaks that arrived cold, meat that was tough and gristly, side dishes that were obviously microwaved, and bills that mysteriously included service charges that weren't mentioned up front. Former servers have revealed the business model is built on volume and deception. "We were trained to push the most expensive items regardless of quality," stated one former employee. "The ribeye was garbage, tough and full of gristle, but it had the highest markup, so that's what we'd recommend. If customers complained, we'd offer a small discount to keep them quiet. But management's attitude was they're tourists. They'll be gone tomorrow. Who cares?" The whole operation was about extracting maximum money from people who didn't know any better. The financial structure behind Aberdeen steakhouses reveals why quality is impossible. The restaurants operate on razor-thin margins with brutal rent costs in central London. To survive, they must turn tables quickly and keep food costs microscopic. That means the cheapest possible ingredients, minimal staff training, and corner cutting on everything from hygiene to portion sizes. When your entire business model depends on tourists who will never return, there's no incentive to maintain standards. When your steakhouse has no actual connection to Aberdeen Angus beef, stores raw meat at room temperature, has cockroach and mouse infestations in food storage areas, deliberately targets tourists who can't follow up on complaints, and operates a business model built on deception and volume rather than quality, you're not getting a traditional British steakhouse experience. You're getting a cynical trap that trades on location and naivety while serving some of the worst food in London. The systematic failure behind every plate. These 8 restaurants represent different segments of UK dining, from American chains to Italian brands to tourist traps, but they share common failures that reveal how broken the system has become. Right now, across the UK, over 95,000 food premises are overdue for safety inspections. Local authority funding cuts have decimated environmental health departments, with many councils operating at half their required inspection capacity. This means restaurants can operate for years without proper oversight, allowing dangerous practices to become embedded in daily operations. The rate of food safety prosecutions has collapsed. Despite thousands of violations documented annually, only a handful result in meaningful penalties. Fines rarely exceed the profit restaurants make from the violations, creating a perverse incentive where corner cutting becomes a rational business decision. When Bella Italia can operate with cockroach infestations and pay just $8,900 in fines while serving thousands of customers, the penalty is simply the cost of doing business. Corporate ownership structures have made accountability nearly impossible. Many of these restaurants are owned by private equity firms or holding companies that move assets between entities to avoid liability. When something goes catastrophically wrong, the operating company enters administration, debts are written off, and the same ownership emerges running restaurants under different names. The victims, customers who got sick, employees who lost jobs, suppliers left unpaid, have no recourse. What you see on the menu, the Italian flags, the French cafe aesthetic, the promises of fresh preparation, isn't what's happening in the kitchen. The reality is frozen, reheated, contaminated, and deliberately deceptive. The marketing promises quality, The reality is whatever survives cost-cutting, understaffing, and regulatory neglect. If you want to see more investigations like this one, exposing what really happens in UK restaurants, check the video on screen. Thanks for watching, and think carefully before your next meal out.